I'm Emily Turner, and I'm 16. My mother just told me I was her biggest mistake in front of the entire family at my cousin's birthday party, then watched as they all laughed like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. The silence that followed felt like drowning in ice water, while everyone pretended I wasn't standing right there. I kept my face completely blank. That's a skill you learn when you grow up being everyone's favorite disappointment. But tonight, driving home on these icy roads, something's about to happen that'll change everything. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the family scapegoat. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. See, growing up as Linda Turner's accident wasn't exactly a fairy tale. She had me at 16, and somehow that became my fault. Every argument, every struggle, every disappointment in her life got traced back to one moment: me existing. If I hadn't gotten pregnant with you, was how most of her sentences started. The ending was always creative. Today, it was, I could have been something. The family gathering was at Uncle Rick's house, celebrating my cousin Madison's sweet 16. The irony wasn't lost on me that Madison was the same age Mom was when she had me, but Madison's birthday was cause for celebration while my birth was apparently a catastrophe worth discussing 16 years later. Linda had found her audience in the kitchen while I grabbed a soda from the fridge. My aunts were hanging on her every word as she held court by the counter. Emily was my wake-up call, she announced, gesturing with her wine glass. Showed me exactly what not to do with my life. The laughter that followed made my stomach twist, but I'd learned not to react. That just gave them more ammunition. At least you figured it out, Aunt Carol said, patting Linda's shoulder. Look at you now with Tyler and Sarah. Perfect kids. Perfect kids. My half-siblings, 7 and 9, who got birthday parties and family photos and all the maternal love I'd apparently used up just by being born. Emily's different, Linda continued, lowering her voice just enough to make it seem confidential while ensuring I could still hear. I don't know where she came from. Nothing like Tyler and Sarah. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. Staying would only give Linda more material for her greatest hits album of maternal regret. Leaving already? Uncle Rick called out as I passed the living room. School night, I lied smoothly. It was Saturday. The drive home was supposed to be 20 minutes on country roads I'd traveled 1,000 times. But February in Michigan means black ice, and my mom's ancient Honda wasn't exactly built for winter weather. I was being careful, going slow, thinking about everything I just heard. Then I hit that patch of ice on Miller Road. Time slowed down as the car spun toward the concrete bridge abutment. I had just enough time to think that this was probably going to hurt before everything went black. The first thing I heard was beeping. Rhythmic, persistent beeping that pulled me out of darkness like a rope dragging me up from the bottom of a lake. The second thing I noticed was that I couldn't feel my legs. She's waking up. A woman's voice, professional and calm. I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. A straw appeared at my lips, and I managed a few sips of water before attempting words. What happened? My voice came out as barely a whisper. You were in a car accident, honey. You hit some ice and went into a concrete barrier. Do you remember? Fragments came back. The party. Linda's words. The spinning car. How bad? The nurse's expression shifted slightly. You have some serious injuries, Emily. We need to run more tests, but right now we need permission for emergency surgery. That's when I heard my mother's voice from somewhere nearby, sharp and angry. I already told you people I'm not authorizing anything. That girl has been nothing but trouble since the day she was born. My blood turned to ice. Even for Linda, this was cold. Ma'am, your daughter could die without this surgery. A man's voice responded, firm and professional. Then maybe that's for the best. Linda's response was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that I wondered if I was hallucinating. I'm not spending another dime on that mistake. Let someone else deal with her for once. The voices moved away from my room, but I caught fragments of the conversation happening just outside my door. Legal guardian, emergency protocol, birth certificate. I must have lost consciousness again because the next time I opened my eyes, there was a different energy in the room. The nurse who'd been there before was back, but she wasn't alone. A man in a suit was checking some papers. Emily? The nurse leaned over my bed. How are you feeling? Confused, I managed. What's happening with the surgery? The man in the suit stepped forward. My name is David Chen. I'm the hospital administrator. We've been trying to locate your other legal guardian. What other guardian? I asked, though even as the words left my mouth, pieces were clicking together. According to your birth records, your mother listed a father on your hospital birth certificate. Michael Harris. We've been trying to reach him. My world tilted sideways. In 16 years, Linda had never once mentioned my father's name. I'd stopped asking years ago because it only made her angrier. She always said he was nobody worth knowing, or a deadbeat who ran the first chance he got. He's coming, the administrator continued. He should be here within the hour. He's agreed to authorize the surgery. You found my father? The words felt strange in my mouth. The nurse squeezed my hand gently. He didn't know about you, Emily. Your mother never told him she was pregnant. Of course she didn't. Because that would require Linda to share the narrative, to admit that maybe, just maybe, she had choices in how her life turned out. Where is he now? I asked. Driving here from Grand Rapids. He left the moment we called. I closed my eyes and tried to process this. For 16 years, I'd believed I was unwanted by everyone, that my very existence was a burden nobody chose to carry. But somewhere out there was a man who'd just found out he had a daughter and was racing through the night to save her life. The irony was almost funny. Linda had spent years telling me my father was worthless, that he'd abandoned us without a second thought. Turns out the only parent who'd abandoned me was the one tucked safe in her bed tonight, probably sleeping peacefully now that her problem might finally be solved. At 2:47 a.m., I heard footsteps running down the hospital corridor. Fast, purposeful footsteps that stopped just outside my room. A voice I'd never heard before was asking rapid-fire questions. Is she okay? Is she conscious? What exactly happened? The administrator's voice responded with medical terms and legal requirements, but what I heard underneath was relief. Someone had come. Someone who didn't know me from anyone had dropped everything and driven through the night because I existed. The door opened and a man stepped inside. Tall, dark hair streaked with gray, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and jeans like he'd grabbed whatever clothes were closest. His eyes found mine immediately, and I saw something I'd never seen directed at me before. Immediate, fierce protectiveness. Emily? He approached my bed carefully, like I might break if he moved too fast. I'm Michael. I'm your... He stopped, clearly unsure what to call himself. My father, I said quietly. The word felt foreign, but not wrong. Yes. His voice cracked slightly. I had no idea you existed until 2 hours ago, but I need you to know that I'm here now. Whatever you need, whatever this costs, whatever has to happen, I'm here. I studied his face, looking for traces of myself. The nose, maybe? Definitely the eyes. But more than physical similarities, there was something else. He was looking at me like I mattered, like my life had value. Where have you been? I asked, not accusingly, just needing to understand. Michael's expression darkened. Your mother never told me she was pregnant. I thought, we dated for a few months when we were 16. When she suddenly stopped returning my calls, I figured she'd moved on. Kids that age, you know? I tried reaching out a few times, but she was always too busy or had other plans. So you never knew. I swear to you, Emily, I never knew. If I had... He stopped and took a shaky breath. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about all of this. Right now you need surgery. The surgeon appeared in the doorway, clearly eager to get started now that the legal hurdles were cleared. Mr. Harris, we need to move quickly. Michael turned to me. I'm going to sign whatever they need me to sign. When you wake up, I'll still be here. It was such a simple promise, but it hit me like a truck. When you grow up with a mother who treats your existence like a daily inconvenience, having someone promise to stick around feels revolutionary. Okay, I whispered. As they wheeled me toward surgery, I caught a glimpse of Michael in the hallway, already on his phone. Cancel everything, he was saying to whoever was on the other end. Family emergency. I don't know when I'll be back. Family emergency. Like I was family, like I was worth disrupting his entire life for. Just before the anesthesia took hold, I had a moment of perfect clarity. For 16 years, I'd thought I was unwanted because the one person who was supposed to love me treated me like a burden. But that wasn't the whole story. The whole story included a father who'd been kept in the dark and who'd moved heaven and earth the moment he found out I existed. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I'd always believed. Consciousness came back in pieces. The beeping machines first, then the familiar antiseptic smell, then the awareness that my body felt different. Heavier somehow, but also strangely peaceful. I opened my eyes to soft afternoon light filtering through hospital blinds. My head felt clearer than it had in, well, maybe ever. And sitting in the chair beside my bed, exactly where he'd promised he'd be, was Michael. He looked like he hadn't slept, but when he saw me wake up, his whole face transformed. Hey there, he said softly. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, I said, then paused. Actually, more like I hit a truck. He laughed, which surprised me. Linda never thought my jokes were funny. Well, your sense of humor survived intact, so that's a good sign. I tried to sit up and noticed something taped to the IV stand beside my bed. An official-looking document with a hospital letterhead. My eyes focused on the words at the top. Legal guardian authorization. Emergency custody transfer. And there, in black and white, new legal guardian, Michael Harris, biological father. I stared at those words for a long moment. Is this real? Michael followed my gaze and his expression grew serious. It's real. Emily, I need to tell you some things about what happened while you were in surgery. The way he said it made my stomach clench. What things? Your mother came to the hospital yesterday. His jaw tightened. She wanted to know why you weren't. She wasn't happy that the surgery had been authorized. That was probably putting it mildly. I could imagine Linda's reaction to discovering her problem had been solved by someone else's intervention. What did she say? Michael looked like he was choosing his words carefully. She made it very clear that she considered her responsibility to you to be over. She signed papers transferring all legal rights to me. Just like that? I asked. Just like that. His voice was quiet. Emily, I think there are things you need to know about how you've been living. Things I'm only starting to understand. Over the next hour, Michael told me what he'd learned from doctors, social workers, and hospital administrators. How I'd been brought to the emergency room with no insurance despite Linda having good coverage for Tyler and Sarah. How this wasn't the first time I'd been treated at this hospital. There were records going back years of injuries and illnesses where I'd been brought in as a self-pay patient while my siblings had full coverage. The social worker showed me your school records, Michael said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Perfect attendance, honor roll, but no parent ever attended a single conference or school event. I shrugged. Linda was always busy with Tyler and Sarah's stuff. That's not normal, Emily. That's not how parents are supposed to treat their children. It was strange hearing someone else say what I'd always suspected, but never let myself fully acknowledge. In the Turner family narrative, I was the difficult one, the burden, the source of all problems. Having someone look at the same facts and reach completely different conclusions felt like stepping into an alternate universe. So what happens now? I asked. Michael leaned forward. Now you get better. And when you're ready to leave this place, you come home with me. Home? I have a house in Grand Rapids. House. It's quiet. Probably boring compared to what you're used to. I work a lot, but I can change that. He paused. Emily, I know this is all overwhelming. You don't know me and I don't know you. But I'd like to try to fix that if you're willing. I looked at this man who'd literally appeared out of nowhere to save my life. Who'd spent 16 years not knowing I existed, but who'd immediately stepped up the moment he found out. Who was looking at me like I was something precious rather than something to be endured. What kind of work do you do? I asked. I own a software company. We develop security systems for businesses. He smiled. It's not as boring as it sounds. At least I hope it's not. Is that why you could just cancel everything and come here? Being your own boss has its advantages, he said. But honestly, Emily, even if I'd had to quit my job to be here, I would have. You're my daughter. That means something to me. Daughter. Not burden, not mistake, not problem to be solved. Just daughter. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. The next few days in the hospital gave Michael and me time to piece together my life story, and the picture that emerged wasn't pretty. He'd been gathering information like a detective, talking to doctors, reviewing records, asking questions I'd never thought to ask myself. Your birth certificate lists me as the father, but your mother never applied for child support, he told me on my third day post-surgery. I never received any legal notices, any requests for financial assistance, nothing. Why would she do that? I asked, though I had my suspicions. Because accepting help from me would have meant admitting she had options? It would have complicated her narrative, the narrative. Linda's favorite story about how her life had been ruined by teenage pregnancy, how she'd been abandoned and left to struggle alone. Except none of that was true. She'd chosen to struggle alone. She'd chosen to keep me isolated from the one person who might have made things easier for both of us. The school counselor called me yesterday. Michael continued. Apparently you've been meeting with her regularly. Something about college applications? I felt my face flush. I've been looking into scholarships. My grades are good enough for academic aid, and I thought maybe what? Maybe I could get out. Michael's expression softened. Emily, what did you want to study? Engineering, maybe, or computer science. I like solving problems, figuring out how things work. I shrugged. But that was just dreaming. Linda made it pretty clear that paying for college wasn't in the budget. What about for Tyler and Sarah? I stared at him. What do you mean? Has your mother made any college plans for them? The question hit me like cold water. Of course she had. Tyler was only 9, but Linda had already started a college fund for him. Sarah had a savings account specifically labeled Future Education. I'd seen the statements on Linda's desk. Oh, I said quietly. Your mother has been systematically excluding you from the family financial planning while positioning herself as a struggling single parent, Michael said, his voice tight with anger. Emily, did you have a bedroom in your house? I sleep on the couch mostly, I admitted. My room is more like storage now. Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. That's not how families work, sweetheart. That's not how children should be treated, sweetheart. The casual endearment made my chest tight. Linda had never used pet names with me. I was always just Emily, said with varying degrees of irritation. Mr. Harris? A knock on the door interrupted us. I'm Janet Morrison from Family Services. I'd like to speak with both of you. The social worker was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who settled into the chair across from my bed with a thick folder. Emily, I've been reviewing your situation, and I want you to know that what happened here, your mother's refusal to authorize medical care, is legally considered medical neglect. Combined with the other evidence we've gathered about your living situation, this case would typically result in removal from the home. What other evidence? I asked. The educational neglect, the housing situation, the exclusion from family medical coverage despite available resources. She looked at Michael. However, since your biological father has stepped forward and is requesting custody, and since your mother has voluntarily relinquished her parental rights, we can avoid the foster care system entirely. Michael leaned forward. What do I need to do to make this official? We'll need background checks, a home study, and temporary supervision. But honestly, Mr. Harris, this is the best case scenario for everyone involved. Janet looked at me. Emily, how do you feel about this arrangement? I thought about it. 3 days ago, I'd been the unwanted daughter living on borrowed time in a house where I didn't belong. Now I was being asked if I wanted to live with a father who'd moved heaven and earth to save my life. I think I'd like to try, I said. On my 4th day in the hospital, Linda finally showed up. I heard her voice in the hallway first, that particular tone she used when she was trying to sound reasonable while being completely unreasonable. I just want to see if she's manipulating him the way she's manipulated everyone else. Michael had left briefly to handle some business calls, so I was alone when she appeared in my doorway. She looked exactly the same, blonde hair in perfect waves, makeup flawless, wearing the kind of outfit that said, responsible suburban mother. The costume had always been convincing. Well, she said, not bothering to come closer to the bed. You certainly landed on your feet, didn't you? Hello, Linda. Her mouth tightened at the use of her first name instead of Mom. But honestly, the woman had forfeited the title when she told a hospital she'd rather let me die than pay for surgery. Don't think this changes anything, she continued. You're still exactly what you always were, an inconvenience that someone else has to deal with now. I know, I said calmly. The difference is he wants to deal with it. Linda's face flushed. You don't know him at all. Give it a few months and he'll see what I've been dealing with all these years. You're difficult, Emily. You're ungrateful and demanding and yet somehow I managed to maintain a 4.0 GPA while living in a house where I was treated like an unwanted guest, I interrupted. Funny how that works. The door opened and Michael stepped back into the room. His expression went cold the moment he saw Linda. I thought I made it clear you weren't welcome here, he said quietly. She's still my daughter, Linda snapped. No, Michael's voice was steel. According to the papers you signed, she's not. You gave up that right when you told the doctors you'd rather let her die than authorize surgery. Linda's composure finally cracked. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for that girl. 16 years of my life, my hopes, my dreams, your choices. Michael cut her off. Every single one of them was your choice. You chose not to tell me I had a daughter. You chose to exclude her from your family. You chose to make her feel unwanted and unloved. His voice grew harder with each word. And when she was dying, you chose to walk away. You think you're rescuing her? Linda's voice turned vicious. Wait until you see what she's really like. Wait until the manipulations start, until she turns on you the way she turned this whole family upside down. Michael stepped closer to Linda, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked truly dangerous. Let me be very clear about something, he said, his voice low and controlled. Emily didn't turn anything upside down. She was a child who deserved love and protection, and instead she got you. But that ends now. Linda's eyes darted between Michael and me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Uncertainty. For 16 years, she'd controlled the narrative about my life, about my worth, about my place in the world. But suddenly there was someone else in the room who saw things differently. This isn't over, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Actually, it is, Michael replied. It's been over since you walked away from your own daughter when she needed you most. After Linda left, Michael sat down heavily in the chair beside my bed. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said. I'm not, I replied. I've never seen anyone stand up to her before. She's always controlled every conversation, every narrative, every relationship. I paused. It was nice to watch someone not buy into her act. Michael looked at me with something that might have been pride. You handled that really well. Most kids would have fallen apart. I've had a lot of practice, I said dryly. He laughed, which surprised both of us. You know what? I think we're going to be okay, Emily. For the first time in 16 years, I thought he might be right. 2 weeks later, I was finally cleared to leave the hospital. Michael had spent every day getting to know me, and honestly, it was weird having someone actually interested in my opinions about things. He asked what music I liked, what books I read, whether I preferred morning or night. Basic stuff that Linda had never bothered to learn in 16 years. "Ready to see home?" he asked, wheeling me toward his car in the hospital wheelchair I didn't really need anymore. "You're home," I corrected. "I'm just visiting until we figure this out." Michael stopped pushing the wheelchair. "Emily, look at me." I turned around to face him. "It's not my home. It's our home. There's a difference. Our home." The words felt foreign and warm at the same time. The drive to Grand Rapids took about an hour, and Michael used the time to tell me about his life. He'd started his software company when he was 25 with nothing but a computer and an idea. Now, at 32, he employed 40 people, and his security systems protected businesses across 3 states. "I work a lot," he admitted as we pulled into a quiet neighborhood lined with maple trees. "Probably too much, but that's going to change." His house was nothing like what I'd expected. Not a mansion, but solid and comfortable. 2 stories, dark green shutters, a front porch with actual furniture on it like people might sit there and enjoy themselves. The kind of place that looked like home in movies. "What do you think?" he asked as we stood on the front walk. "It looks—" I searched for the right word. "Peaceful," he smiled. That's what I was going for. Inside, everything was clean but not obsessively perfect. Books everywhere, a coffee cup left on the kitchen counter, a jacket thrown over a chair. It looked like a place where someone actually lived instead of performed. "Your room is upstairs," Michael said, grabbing my bag. "I hope you like it." I had to guess about what a 16-year-old girl might want. He led me up a staircase lined with framed photographs. I stopped to look at them. Michael at various ages, sometimes with other people, sometimes alone. Travel pictures, work events, candid moments, a life documented in images. "You take a lot of pictures," I observed. "I like capturing moments," he said, "especially the good ones." The room he showed me was 3 times the size of the space I'd had at Linda's house. A real bed with a headboard, a desk by the window, empty bookshelves waiting to be filled, and a dresser that was actually mine to use. On the desk was a brand new laptop. "I thought you might need it for school," Michael explained when he saw me staring at it, "and I figured you could use it to research colleges too." "Michael, this is too much." "Emily," he said seriously, "this is the bare minimum of what you deserve. This is how parents are supposed to provide for their children. What do you think will happen next?" Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure you're subscribed because Emily's story is about to take an incredible turn. That night, over dinner that Michael had actually cooked instead of ordering takeout, he told me about the legal proceedings that were moving forward. "The state is pursuing criminal charges against your mother," he said carefully. "Medical neglect, educational neglect, child abandonment. The case is pretty solid. What does that mean for her? Fines, possibly probation, definitely a permanent record. But Emily, there's something else." He hesitated. "We found out she's been claiming you as a dependent on her taxes while providing almost no financial support. That's fraud." Of course it was. Linda had found a way to benefit from my existence while doing everything possible to make me feel like a burden. The good news is that the court case is moving quickly. Your mother isn't contesting the custody transfer, so we should have everything finalized within a month. And then what? Then you're officially my daughter, and we figure out this whole family thing together. Family thing. Like it was something we were both learning instead of something I was supposed to automatically know how to do. Living with Michael was like learning a foreign language, not because he was difficult, but because everything worked differently than what I was used to. When I did well on a test, he celebrated. When I had a bad day, he asked what was wrong instead of telling me to stop being dramatic. When I forgot to load the dishwasher, he just did it himself without a lecture about responsibility and gratitude. It was unsettling, honestly. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. "You're jumpy," he observed one evening while we were watching a movie. "Every time I get up, you tense up like you're expecting bad news." He wasn't wrong. At Linda's house, sudden movements usually meant someone was angry about something I'd done or failed to do. "I'm still adjusting," I said. "Take all the time you need," Michael replied. "But Emily, you need to understand something. You're safe here. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not changing my mind about wanting you here." "How can you be sure?" I asked. "You barely know me." "I know enough," he said confidently. "I know you're smart and resilient and funny. I know you've been carrying responsibilities that should never have been on your shoulders. I know you deserved better than what you got for 16 years. He paused. "And I know that being your father is the best thing that's ever happened to me, even under these circumstances." The casual way he said it, like it was just a fact rather than a declaration, made my throat tight. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything. What would have happened if Linda had told you about me when I was born?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I would have stepped up immediately," he said finally. "I would have wanted to be part of your life, help support you, be there for the important stuff, your first steps, first words, first day of school." His voice grew sadder. "I would have made sure you knew every single day that you were wanted and loved." "Even at 16? I asked. "Even when you were just a kid yourself?" "Especially then," he said. "Emily, when I was 16, I was already thinking about my future, about what I wanted to build with my life. Having a daughter would have changed my plans, but it would have made them better, not worse." I thought about Linda at 16, how she'd talked about me ruining her dreams instead of changing them. The difference in perspective was staggering. "Do you think she knows that?" I asked. "That she had choices?" "I think your mother has spent 16 years convincing herself that she was a victim so she wouldn't have to take responsibility for her decisions," Michael said. "But that's her problem to solve, not yours." That weekend, Michael took me shopping for things I'd need for my new room, not just necessities, but things I actually wanted. Books, art supplies, decorations that reflected my taste instead of someone else's idea of what a teenage girl should like. "What's your favorite color?" he asked as we stood in the paint section of Home Depot. No one had ever asked me that before. At Linda's house, everything was beige or white because those colors were sophisticated and timeless. "Blue," I said. "Like ocean blue?" "Then let's paint your room blue." Just like that. No discussion about resale value or how it might look to guests. Just my preference, treated like it mattered. As we loaded paint cans into the cart, I realized this was the first time in my life that my wants had been considered equally valid as everyone else's. The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in March. Michael had hired a lawyer, but honestly, it seemed like a formality at this point. Linda had signed away all her parental rights. The state had documented the neglect, and I'd made it clear to everyone involved that I wanted to stay with Michael. Still, I was nervous. "What if she changes her mind?" I asked Michael as we walked into the courthouse. "She can't," he said firmly. "The rights termination is already processed. Today is just about making my custody official." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more like a conference room with fancy furniture. Linda was already there with a lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She didn't look at me when we walked in. Judge Morrison was a serious woman in her 50s who'd clearly read all the paperwork thoroughly. "Miss Turner," she said to me, "I understand you've been living with Mr. Harris for the past month. How has that been?" "Good," I said, then realized that wasn't very descriptive. "I mean, really good. He's been the kind of parent I always hoped I might have someday." "Can you elaborate on that?" I glanced